second to go for the win. He got it. The Cougars win it. Number one remains number one. Cougars reset. Jackson again finds it. And the Houston Cougars go from the first floor out to the Sweet 16.
Stick it in your pipe and smoke it, baby.
Yes! Welcome to the Scott and Holland podcast. Back here, we have made it to the season 9 finale, the 53rd episode of the season. We have survived the first Houston Cougar season in the Big 12, even though the sports themselves have been done for almost 2 months now. Here at the very tail end of July, almost definitionally the farthest you could be into July without being into August here at about 6:30 Central Time on July 31st. Today was, even though this isn't a topic tonight, it almost feels like today was kind of like the beginning of the sports season to come. Like you had football's first training camp day. And of course, tonight, kind of like we alluded to last week in our penultimate season 9 show, we revealed our 7th annual Paw-scar award winners. Tonight, we are going to give the fan vote, give our own winners, and discuss what was a fantastic and historic season for Houston Cougar athletics. Dustin, we've made it here. The dog days of summer are almost over. It is less than a month until college football will be on our TVs again. And I know you, like the rest of us here, enjoy this little annual award exercise we do. So how are you doing, friend?
I'm doing great. It's funny you said that. I kind of had a similar feeling today looking at watching some of the videos that like our friend Ryan at Go Cougs was posting from like Willie Fritz and people at fall camp and just everyone doing fall camp and just kind of seeing everyone on Twitter talking about their respective schools being heading into fall camp. It did kind of feel like, it did kind of feel like day one of the 2024-25 athletics calendar. I had to make sure I got the easiest screw that one up and I would have been very embarrassed. But no, it feels good. I feel like we're heading into next year. And yeah, last episode of season 9 with season 10 of the Scott and Owen podcast just around the corner. Exciting times.
So, because I know the majority of you still listen via audio, and I understand this as I'm an audio person. I'm not really somebody like I would say the majority of the podcasts I listen to as a consumer have some kind of video product, and I would say I'm an occasional consumer of those. And that's the majority of you. So I won't belabor this too much, but paint a mental picture of Bobby. If you don't know what Bobby looks like, I'm not going to give you some kind of script, but Bobby tonight, I am used to at least occasionally being the most dressed up here just because I'm directly coming off of being at the office. I'm a couple hours behind my good friends out back in Texas. And Bobby is in, well, I can only, is that black or a navy blue blazer, Bob?
It's black.
A black blazer, a black blazer, a red shirt, and an actual tie. Like, I don't think this is a clip-on. I think this is one of the ones you actually have to knot. He has clearly leaned into this being an award show, taking it seriously. His first season,
he's sipping wine as he does this.
Wine, red wine for the Cougs. He was quick to point out to us before the show. So you have dressed for the occasion. I like how the 3 co-hosts. There's like various states that are like Dustin, full on casual. Me, I've kind of got the business casual, the button up and black jeans. Bobby is in a full fucking suit. Pardon my profanity this early in the episode. So I appreciate your commitment to the bit and commitment to this award show. Clearly you were taking it more seriously than Dustin. I've just taken it for granted kind of in our 7th annual award exercise here. How you doing, friend?
I gotta say, it's really warm in my house with this jacket on. I don't know how long it's gonna last, but it's here for the start, okay? No, everything's going good, man. I was just watching the Olympics, and I just have a quick little thought thing for you guys. What's the one sport that you could not compete, but like you wouldn't die in the Olympics? And what's the one that you would just, like, the idea of doing it, you think you might die in it? Because I was watching water polo, and I'm 100% sure that if you put me out in the pool, like, I know how to swim, I'm a good swimmer, but you put me out there, I'm going to drown. There's no doubt about it. I'm drowning instantaneously. But, like, I feel like I could do dressage. Like, if you train the horse and you put me on it, I feel like I could do enough. Like, you give me a couple of commands, I feel like I could do that one.
Dustin, I was going to say, to buy myself a tiny bit more time, what's your answer to this one?
I mean, it's funny you say water polo. I think both answers are water polo. If I can play goalie, give me water polo.
Fair enough.
If I have to play any other position, I would immediately drown trying to play water polo. So I think water polo is my one holistic answer to this.
I think if you caught one of the doubles tennis players mid-sneeze and gave me 100 tries, I'd return maybe 1 or 2 of this, and that might be generous. So I guess that's my answer there. But God, the number of sports that go into the latter category that you said there. Well, I think I would if I did shooting. If I did shooting, I just would miss the target. But I think I would properly just like, I would shoot the gun properly.
I could shoot the gun.
I could shoot the gun. I would not do it anywhere close to like Olympic level. I guess those are the 2 answers there. Water polo is a good one. I think it would be very funny to watch me just get wiped out by even like the absolute worst Olympic basketball player. So that's going to be my answer there. So yeah, I'm going to say Olympic basketball, though there are many right answers to the what Olympic sport would I die if you dropped me in the middle of it.
I played basketball in high school, and I notably did not pick basketball for the sport that I could hang in the Olympics because I am well aware of the multitudes of levels of goodness at basketball that exist between me and even the worst player on like Puerto Rico or whatever in the Olympics.
It's just one of those things that I told myself, and I think I told Sam this, that I just wanted to watch weird sports in the Olympics. Like I didn't care about the gymnastics and the swimming. Like I care, right? But like I wanted to watch, so I spent all night Saturday like watching fencing and all this stuff. And the more I watch these random sports, I'm just like, yeah, I would die. Like I am 100% certain that I would somehow poke myself in the eye with a fencing sword. Like,
oh man, I realize the real death sport is rugby. If we're being honest, I would like
go
with rugby, but also had the best. My favorite play of the Olympics so far, which was that American women's rugby player busting through for the like whatever full field try right at the end there to get the U.S. a bronze.
Good job calling it a try. You almost said touchdown.
I thought about it. I wanted to
do her best Marcus Jones impression, honestly.
Yeah. All right. Sorry to get us off track before we even started. Sam, take us away.
No. I was a fan. Gotta talk Olympics at least briefly, even if it is not a scheduled talking thing. And it's always going to be a scheduled talking thing because we love them. They support the show and they make a fantastic product. It's our friends at Charlie Hustle on the World Wide Web at charliehustle.com. As I always say on here, the makers of incredibly comfortable vintage collegiate wearables, t-shirts, hoodies, crew necks, anything you could put on your person. They got it with fantastic Houston Cougar designs, a really awesome Cougar collection. It's been cool to see that grow. Really fantastic Big 12 collection. Charlie Hustle themselves being a Big 12 sponsor of multiple events. Our friends in Kansas City, vintage made fresh. Go to charliehustle.com. Use our promo code PAWD15. That's PAWD15 like podcast. It's going to save you 15% on any order you do at charliehustle.com. Football season is almost a month away. Don't procrastinate any further. Get yourself some Charlie Hustle and look good for the coming football season, for your tailgate, for everything Houston Cougar related that you will be going in person for. So please support our friends at Charlie Hustle, charliehustle.com. One more time, going to, of course, mention our Patreon, patreon.com/SHPAWDcast for not the last time ever, but I guess for the last time in this podcast season. Go there. If you like what we do, if you have a little bit of extra money to kick around, send it our way and support the weekly independent Houston Cougar podcast that the three of us do here. All right, guys, we've done the Olympic talk, done the roasting / praising of Bobby's wardrobe choices for this. Let's get to the 7th annual Paw-scars if y'all are good with that.
Perfect.
Let's do it.
Sam, I believe you're up for the first category here.
You were correct. I don't know what I was waiting for there. The male athlete of the year, usually our curtain opener for this. Past winners of this award include Marcus Sasser, Marcus Jones, Quentin Grimes, Kamari Montgomery, a 3-way tie between Cam Burrell, Ed Oliver, Eli Hall, and Cam Burrell. Once again, your nominees for this year are Jamal Shead from the men's basketball program, Louis Hinchcliffe from track and field, Sean Maswanyani, also from track and field, Santiago de la Fuente from golf, Jaywan Roberts from basketball, and Carrie Arboleda from baseball. And guys, it was hard not to pick Jamal Shead for this one. Very, very hard. At one point in time, I actually had Shead as my pick, and I wouldn't argue against you or anyone else that ultimately picks him for Male Athlete of the Year. These awards all have multiple right answers to the question, hence why they got nominated in the first place. But guys, I voted Louis Hinchcliffe. I can't look past winning a national championship like Hinchcliffe did at NCAA Outdoors. I know comparing sports isn't apples to apples, but winning a national title is winning a national title, and thus why I picked him here, even against an unbelievably stacked field on the men's sports side. Bobby, who did you pick and why?
Yeah, so I actually went with Louis Hinchcliffe as well. It's hard to argue against the Natty. Like, I can bust out you can bust out stats and you can talk about the year that Jamal Shead had. Incredible. Wani, one of my favorite Cougars to ever lace him up. But in 1 year, you win a Natty. It's hard for me to vote against that. Dustin?
Yeah, I am going to argue against the Natty. Not that I'm not impressed by it or anything like that. I mean, and again, I feel bad making the argument here because I'm not trying to belittle what Louis did this year. There are 15 or so events to win a Natty in each indoors and outdoors. So I mean, I think winning one Natty in one event is maybe analogous to something that Jamal Shead did, which he was named the player of the year in the best conference in the country, the player of the year and the defensive player of the year in the best conference in the country. Not only that, I think Houston's best overall team this year was men's basketball. Yes, I appreciate that, men's track and field at outdoors had a higher finish than maybe men's basketball did in the NCAA tournament. You can kind of argue that one back and forth however you want to. But not only was he the best player on the best team that U of H had this year, but UH had a really good team, a really, really, really good team. Like even the other players besides Jamal Shead, really, really talented, and still you could just see the difference between the way that team played with Jamal Shead on the court versus not on the court. It's the reason why, I think even though we're all excited about U of H having 4 returning starters under Kelvin Sampson for the first time, I think would be quick to acknowledge it comes with a huge asterisk that the one guy they're losing was their most important player on both sides of the court last year. So for that reason, I did not go past Jamal Shead and ended on him with my vote. We look at the fan vote for the last one, and the fans overwhelmingly agreed with me. Jamal Shead got 65.7% of the fan vote. Louis Hinchcliffe got the majority of the rest of it with 25.7% of the vote there. So we end up with a split tie between Jamal Shead and Louis Hinchcliffe. I think 2 very deserving winners of the men's player of the year there.
I don't think we're going to look back on the year and be like,
I was just saying, in the very first one, the thing you guys were scared about, the 2-way tie.
The very first 2-way tie in Paw-scar history. We just witnessed history, folks.
I say a deserving 2-way tie. And again, multiple right answers to this question. Like I will not argue. I will not do a counter argument against Jamal Shead because Jamal Shead's awesome. And thankfully we have other opportunities to vote for him, not to telegraph any future votes from yours truly.
Yeah, it really feels like a situation where it was those 2 above anyone else. And then the other one, there was kind of a little bit of a tier, not to say that.
All right, Bobby, I think you are up for Female Athlete of the Year.
Yep. So let's talk Female Athlete of the Year. Last year, previous winners, Kate Georgiadis, back-to-back winner in 22 and 23. Karen Fregard in 2020-2021. Leonie Ham, Savannah Hebner. I'm sorry, Harm.
Leonie Harm, I want to throw that in there.
Yeah, my bad. Leonie Harm, that's my bad. I don't know how to read, apparently. Savannah Hebner and Shelby Miller. And this year, your candidates are Kenna Sauer, Moa Saviniscold, Sydney Townsend, Kellyanne Beckford, and Tariah Coleman. And for me, I voted for Kenna Sauer. To your point, Dustin, best player on the best team that maybe the university has, not to telegraph anything later on, but came in hard to be a much more impactful transfer than Kenna Sauer was this year. So she's got my vote. Sam, who'd you go for here?
Like the men's athlete of the year, but I actually started here by picking a different athlete. I think I started with Kellyanne Beckford, but ultimately also landed on Kenna Sauer because of the absurd impact she had in only 1 year with the Cougar volleyball program. Not that this would have been a bad team or anything close to it if Sauer had never joined the program, nor was she the only standout veteran who played a big part in U of H having that strong first Big 12 season, one of the very best volleyball conferences, but her contributions both offensively and defensively are so indispensable that I don't think I could have picked anyone else for this award. Dustin.
Yeah, I ended up with you guys. I also went with Kennesaw for my vote here. And it was hard not to pick Townsend or Beckford. You know, that 4x4 relay for Houston women's track and field was so strong all year. Multiple really impressive, conference titles and strong performances at NCAA championships. I really wanted to go for one of the members of that team, but kind of like you guys said, I mean, Kennesaw was just so good, just really raised the level of what was possible for this women's volleyball program, and I think really helped them have the successful first year in the Big 12 that they had. So I went with Kennesaw, same as you guys. And then we look at the fan vote, and the fans agreed with us as well. Not quite the runaway victory that Jamal Shead had with the fans, but she still did get 64.5% of their vote, with a tie for second place between those two track and field athletes, Sydney Townsend and Kellyanne Beckford. So make it a clean sweep for Kennesaw Female Athlete of the Year. All right, coming up, one of the more interesting ones, not to spoil anything, the fan vote I think was real split on this one, and I think we might have a lot of different votes on this. I'm really curious to see where this goes, and that is Game of the Year for a team. Last year, it was football's dramatic comeback win over Memphis. The year before that, men's basketball defeating Arizona in the NCAA tournament. Men's hoops defeating Oregon State in the NCAA tournament, men's hoops defeating Ohio State in the NCAA tournament, men's hoops beating Cincinnati at H&PE Arena, and then football beating Oklahoma. Those are our past winners. Game of the Year for a team. This year we had 6 candidates. Your options were men's basketball versus Kansas at home, football versus West Virginia, softball versus UT Austin, men's basketball versus Texas A&M in the NCAA tournament, volleyball versus USC, and men's basketball versus UT Austin at home. This is one I went back and forth quite a bit on. And one of the things that honestly, I kind of went back and forth between two options. And I just kind of felt like I had to pick one of the home men's basketball games this year, just because of what an unbelievable atmosphere that was this year. Not to brag, but I will, as a season ticket holder, getting to get to all those games. Yeah, thank you. It was just the kind of fan experience that I didn't think was ever going to be possible for U of H, not only being in the Big 12 and getting the crazy atmospheres, but having the season that Houston did, going undefeated at home this year. So just so many fun experiences, but nothing was quite like that game against Kansas, just celebrating a Big 12 title, beating the absolute dog snot out of the Kansas Jayhawks, and just kind of establishing yourself as the champions, the team to beat in the Big 12 in year one, just kind of rounding out the unbelievable season that was. So just really, really could not have enjoyed going to men's basketball games more, and could not have possibly enjoyed going to that Kansas game with my buddy Sam here. So that was my vote for Game of the Year. Sam, who you got on this one?
So I also had men's basketball for the home finale against Kansas. I will start by saying my vote is at least somewhat biased by the fact that, like you mentioned, that was one of the few games I was able to be there in Houston for in person this past season. Got to join you, Dustin, for just a fantastic regular season finale. May have also been influenced by the fact that we were both there for a very decisive defeat in person in Lawrence, Kansas in early February when the two teams faced off for the first time in conference play. But just being there that day at the Fertitta Center, the Cougs beating the life out of the Jayhawks from start to finish, it didn't just feel like a butt-kicking win with a great crowd, even though it was that. It felt like a celebration of being a Houston Cougar fan and seeing how far this men's basketball program has come under Kelvin Sampson's leadership. Just everything about it. Getting there like we did right as the seniors are being honored, seeing that for once in my miserable life, a U of H crowd arrived early for a big game. And as soon as I saw that, I was like, oh yeah, this is going to be a cauldron today. Like, people are actually in their seats early for this one. I remember when we were there in Lawrence, I was thinking to myself, now the U of H fans can't be early, but I was just like, man, I would love it if we could, as a rule, all be there early for a big game, and just to see that early on, finding out that K-State had beaten Iowa State, and that regardless of the game's outcome, that this team would be the undisputed Big 12 men's basketball regular season champions. Jim Nance giving an incredibly heartfelt speech to the crowd. I'm not a very sentimental guy. That even a speech that even a hardened cynic like me was almost misty-eyed about, as he was, getting honored as the voice of March, getting the plaque on the wall at the Fertitta Center. The absolutely ravenous crowd, I'll say it for the umpteenth time, pushing the Cougars as they pretty quickly pulled away in this one. Ryan Elvin coming in late and just blowing the roof off the place by torching the Jayhawks late, giving Kansas their worst loss in decades, guys. The Nets getting cut down, what's become, I think, almost an annual tradition, going back to the latter days of this program in the AAC. Everything about it I absolutely loved. It had to be this one for me. Bobby.
Yeah, I'm actually going to have the exact same answer. Men's basketball versus Kansas. It was, I wasn't there, so I didn't have that full experience, but you could just tell from the cameras. You could tell just on social media, everyone was losing their minds, and it was so cool. And it just felt like the crowning moment, and it crowned our arrival to the Big 12. As much as football with the win versus West Virginia, or even the Baylor win felt really nice, this one really felt like everybody in the Big 12 had to begin to respect us and know that we are a program to be reckoned with. And as soon as we are able to get everything in order, this is the reason that game felt like the reason why the schools didn't want us to join the Big 12 for all these years. And it just felt like a celebration of, you couldn't hold us back anymore, and we're here, and you're going to have to deal with us.
All right, so all three hosts going for the men's basketball win over Kansas. The fans were not in agreement with us. We actually had a tie, and neither of the options that ended up in the first place tie was the one that we picked. We had a tie between...
Oh, no, you're good. I think it's going to be football versus West Virginia and men's basketball versus UT Austin.
So close. It was football versus West Virginia and men's basketball versus Texas A&M in the NCAA tournament. If there's one thing we've learned from the Paw-scars, it is the fans will pick your furthest NCAA tournament win, whatever that was. The fans pick it every year. It's uncanny, but they only half picked it this year, so they half picked it along with the football versus West Virginia. Both got 35.9% of the vote. Those were your first place votes. That tells you how split this was. The third place pick was that men's basketball win over Kansas, followed by softball beating the Longhorns. So men's basketball over Kansas is our winner on that one.
So I will be announcing the individual game of the year nominees and what have you. Some past winners for individual game of the year. Kennedy Warren with her fantastic postseason performance against South Dakota, 3-way tie. Marcus Jones against SMU, Tajay Moore against Illinois, and Kyler Edwards against Arizona. And the season before that, Dejan Jarreau against Rutgers. Some of your past winners from the award, as well as Corey Davis, Rob Gray, and Ed Oliver as well. Excuse me. Respect our first three winners to that as well. Your nominees for the current year were Jamari Caldwell for his performance against UT Austin, Jamal Shead in the home win over against UT Austin, Donovan Smith, his 5 touchdown performance in the win over West Virginia, Ariana Jimison's 2 goals against TCU, Sean Maswanyani's Big 12 outdoor championship performance, Emmanuel Sharp's 30 points in the NCAA win over Texas A&M, Kenneth Sauer's 25 kill, 8 dig win in the home finale over K-State, and Justin Murray going 4 for 6 with 2 homers and 5 ribbies in a big road win at Kansas.
And Layla Blair again.
And Layla Blair against in a Cougar women's basketball win over Texas Christian University. I had to make up for my not knowing that by showing I know what TCU stands for. Guys, I picked Emmanuel Sharp's 30 points in the win over Texas A&M. This was actually the last category of all the ones I decided my vote on. At different points, I had Maswanyani's Big 12 3 outdoor wins and Jamari Caldwell's performance in the football game against the Longhorns. I wanted to, even though I didn't pick this one, even though I'm the one that actually pounded on the table to get this one in this group of performances, I really want to highlight the way that he took over that game against far and away the best O-line and the best opponent that UH football faced all season, allowed the Cougar defense to have a puncher's chance, and a performance that probably won't get the credit it deserves just because interior defensive linemen rarely do get the credit they deserve for a big performance. But guys, consider that if Emmanuel Sharp just has a solid season average level kind of game against Texas A&M, that's a loss. And this wonderful UH men's basketball season that we were all just waxing poetic about, rightfully so, it was an incredible season, ended in the round of 32, ended against an in-state rival. And it almost feels like that would be kind of this black cloud. And Sharp was incredible in this one. It can't be overstated. And I think it was also part of a larger season where he went from being kind of, an intriguing bench freshman the season before to one of the better guards in one of the best men's basketball, or in the best men's basketball conference in the space of a year. I think part of the larger story of like, hey, I know he was on the same team as Jamal Shead and Wani Roberts and all these other really good players, but Emmanuel Sharp was really improved. And I think if we had a most improved player award, I feel like Emmanuel Sharp is one of your top nominees there. So I had to pick this performance for me. Bobby, what was your pick here?
Yeah, for me, I went back and forth just like you, Sam. those 3 titles at Big 12 Outdoors are something to be impressed by. That is, it also led to one of my favorite pictures in the history of UH athletics, where they are standing on the podium and he is just getting the stink eye from the Texas athlete. But I went with Emmanuel Sharp, 30 points with his 7 threes in the NCAA tournament win. Just to your point, Sam, everything that you said, I don't have much to add on it. It's just one of those performances that you don't really notice, even in the moment. You're just like, man, Emmanuel Sharp's on fire, man. He looks good. And then you look down, he's got 30 and he hit 7 threes and he just clutched up and just put the team on his back. You know, there's the classic I put the team on my back video, and he put the team on his back. And that was one of the things with the basketball team this year, right? Was that there just seemed to be somebody who would step up every time. And it was usually Jamal Shead, but we saw somebody different and it made a huge impact. Dustin, who you got?
Yeah, I went with Sean Maswangani at Big 12 Outdoors. I was a little surprised, didn't get any votes from the other hosts there. But, I mean, it was just so impressive to win 3 Big 12 titles in a conference that good at track and field. And I don't believe heading in that he was the, best time on the season, favorite in any of those 3 events. Really, really good conference. Really, really deep sprinting conference. I mean, Tech alone has a bunch of good sprinters. The Longhorns have a bunch of good sprinters. Baylor has a bunch of good sprinters. Lots of other ones in the conference. Not to mention, in the 100, he has to beat his own eventual national champion teammate to win the 100-meter title as well. Again, just an absolutely insanely loaded field in the 100, in the 200, in the 4x1. Sean Maswangani wins are obviously part of the relay that won all 3 of those events. Really, really impressive performance for him. And as much as I don't disagree with anything that y'all said about Emmanuel Sharp, and as absolutely relieved as I am that Emmanuel Sharp had that big performance to keep U of H from what would have been, like you said, Sam, a very disheartening loss. You're right. We would have felt a little bit different about this men's basketball program if it ended with a loss. Breaking your string of 4 straight Sweet 16s by losing to the Aggies would have really stung. So very glad that Emmanuel Sharp showed up for that one, but could not look past Sean at Big 12 Outdoors. Looking at the fan vote, another extremely split fan vote, and the fans actually agreed with me. Sean Maswangani was their winner with 37.1% of the vote. Second place was Emmanuel Sharp's game in the NCAA tournament with 17.1%, and then tied at 11.4% of the vote was a tie between Kenneth Sauer's game against a match against Kansas State and Donovan Smith's 5 touchdowns over West Virginia. So another 2-way tie here, as both Sean Maswangani at Big 12 Outdoors and Emmanuel Sharp versus Texas A&M split the tie for individual game of the year.
Yeah, I know we're not, I think as a society, huge fans of co-winners or something like that, but I'm glad both these guys get that, because I don't disagree with the word you said. Sean's performance is incredible, and just incredible U of H athlete, deserves this award.
All right, Bobby, I think you're up for team of the year.
Yes, I am. I'm sorry. I am so sorry. I was like, is it my turn? Past winners are men's track and men's hoops. That's it. I wish there was more depth, I guess, but yeah, it's men's hoops and men's track. So this year,
for each, so we're breaking a tie this year.
Yeah, there you go. Maybe. We might be breaking a tie.
That's true.
All right, so this year we have men's hoops, volleyball, swimming and diving, and men's track and field. And this one, I went back and forth on, had a lot of discussion. And Dustin made a point earlier that track and field, you can't compare sports, you can't do that. If you finish top 5 in the country, you get my vote. You just do. So I went with men's track and field. What a performance. They came in. They were a couple of, Carl Lewis said they were a couple of, it was either Carl Lewis or Will Blackburn, who said they were a couple of small things from being national champions. And I'm not a track expert by any means, but Maswangani has a better start in the 100. He comes through, he finishes on the podium, and things look a lot different for this team. Just like you can make the argument for men's hoops, right? Jamal Shead doesn't go down. What does that team look like? But finishing top 5, if basketball makes it to the Elite 8 and they play the eventual national champions really close, you can kind of make the same argument here. But finishing top 5, you just talked about Sean Maswangani and how he went up against the competition and how tough of a conference it was and all of that. And going to nationals where it's the toughest of the tough competition and walking away top 5, that's really hard for me to argue against. Sam?
I hate that I'm going to pick something different for you because everything you said, like, it's very logical. And I like the idea of, I don't know, like, I feel like men's basketball it's the slightly higher profile sport. So it's going to get, it's going to probably get the fan vote and stuff like that. And, I don't want to say it's to diminish the fantastic seasons that the other teams have had. I'm probably spend more time talking about the other teams than the team I picked, which is, as you could probably guess, Cougar men's basketball. I mean, again, I think swimming and diving being the best non-UT Austin team in the conference was a really incredible accomplishment that even us, as people who talk about every sport and are the Cougar completionists, probably don't talk about as much as it deserves. This was a very good AAC program, but I don't think I felt before the season it was preordained they'd be the best of the rest in a much tougher conference, and they did just that by a pretty decent margin. But I don't know, guys. I can't pick against the team that won the toughest league of men's basketball in their first season after it felt like an entire offseason of the biggest dipshits in largely the American Midwest saying how U of H, they're not going to be a good team in a tougher league. That to me is the satisfaction of it. All the stuff you said, Bobby, don't disagree with a word of it, but I picked men's basketball. Dustin, who'd you go with for team of the year?
Yeah, I went with men's basketball as well. I was tempted to go track and field for the reasons Bobby said, and the top 5 finish at outdoors, which again, not to diminish that accomplishment at all. But I just go back to men's track and field finishing I believe it was 6th and 5th in the Big 12 with the 2 Big 12 championships versus men's basketball just running roughshod over the league and winning the league by 2 games. So kind of like Sam said there, just the transition to even though I think we kind of knew that the dipshits were in for a bit of an awakening once U of H got to that conference. I mean, that was a season that none of us even expected. I don't think for them to. I don't think any of us was like, oh yeah, U of H is going to win the conference by 2 games, no problem. Like, I don't think any of us saw that.
I was on here being like, 12-6 would be an incredible first season. It would have, and we did 3 games better.
3rd or 4th place would be a great accomplishment in this conference, and won the damn thing by 2 games. So for that reason, just couldn't pick wanted to maybe think about juking and going with because it is we pick men's hoops a lot for this category, but they're the
best team on campus.
They also were the best team on campus. So, I mean, it wasn't one of the decisions I didn't think too hard about. The fans were definitely thinking the same way. 74.3% of the vote going to men's basketball, which is our winner, with men's track and field second with 17.1% of the vote. That'll bring us to Coach of the Year, and you're going to see some of those same sports mentioned in our past winners here, which going in reverse is David Rare last year. Actually, we got a little more. We got to mix this one up a little bit. We got David Rare last year. Before that, it was Kelvin Sampson, and Kelvin Sampson. And then the very first year was Ryan Wakamerka from the swimming and diving. So actually, it's very different because we've literally never had the track and field coach win this, which is kind of amazing. But we've got the same 4 nominees as we had for Team of the Year, for Coach of the Year, the coaches of those respective teams. David Rare from volleyball, Kelvin Sampson from men's basketball, Tanika Jameson from swimming and diving, and Carl Lewis from men's track and field. Those are our nominees. And guys, I mean, not to repeat myself too much, but I went with Kelvin Sampson and kind of for the same reason. I was just like, we continue to be amazed by the coaching job that Kelvin Sampson has done this year. And even as someone who didn't think I could be, my opinion of Kelvin Sampson I thought was as high as it could possibly be. And he's still just exceeded my expectations this year in terms of getting this team ready for the transition to the Big 12, both in terms of, the mental aspect and also just in terms of the getting talented players on your roster aspect. So this continues to be another season where Kelvin Sampson really could do no wrong. And aside from an injury to Jamal Shead in the NCAA tournament, we never know what could have happened with this year. So again, would love to have vote for somebody else, although I guess he didn't win last year. So we're not just completely flogging the same, but I voted for Kelvin Sampson to get a 5th Paw-scar for Coach of the Year. Bobby, who you like?
So I know I said track and field on the last one, and I'm going to go with Carl Lewis. And it's not just because of the performance this year. I know this should be based on this year, but what he's done with the program, that we haven't seen this massive fall off from losing one of the most legendary coaches to Sam's point that he said last week, one of the most legendary coaches in University of Houston history. To see him leave, and then you still, granted it took a couple of years, but you come back and you're a top 5 team at nationals, is really, you can't help but speak highly of it and pay attention to the work that Carl Lewis has done in getting this in this program where it has always been. Sam?
Yeah, I said it in last week's podcast. I said it on our friend Parker at Locked On Cougs when I went on his show to talk about Cougs in the Olympics last week. Tanika Jameson, another nominee in this category, and Carl Lewis were like just like the ultimate hard act to follow, like situation. Like Ryan Wakamarka, probably the best run of swimming specifically prior to Tanika Jameson taking over, had a pretty senior heavy team the year before she got here, and all the crews have done is like I think maximize the best possible conference performance each season that she's been here. And that Carl Lewis, again, following Leroy Burrell, like it does help when you are Carl Lewis, a legendary Olympian alumnus of the university and somebody who was in the program for a number of years prior. But I think to get the program back to where it was before, extremely difficult to do. And him and the leadership duo, him and Will Blackburn, got this program back there. I think incredible testament to him. I did pick Kelvin Sampson. I didn't want to overthink this. Sometimes the simple answer is the right one. I picked the coach of the program that won the Big 12 regular season title in their first year in the conference. A regular season title that is a gauntlet, might be underselling it. So picked Kelvin Sampson here, even though it is a list of 4 extremely, I think, worthy nominees.
Yeah, and as we look at the fan vote, the fans agreed with Sam and I. 62.9% of their vote went to Kelvin Sampson, making him the clear winner, with Carl Lewis in second place at 20%. So 5th win in the Paw-scar Coach of the Year category for Kelvin Sampson.
Our next award here is the Graduating Senior of the Year. Really incredible who's who, by the way, of the past winners here of great Cougar athletes of the last 7 or 8 years. Greg Ward Jr., Rob Gray, Galen Robinson, Fabian White, Tank Dell, and a 3-way tie 1 year between Deke Jerome, Mackenzie Leahy, and Marquez Stevenson. Your nominees for the current season are Abby Jackson from the volleyball program, Sean Massognani from track, Jamal Shead from basketball, and Santiago de la Fuente from men's golf. My votes for Jamal Shead, even considering the fact that I didn't vote for him previously, and that I will admit kind of affected my non-voting for him in the male athlete of the year. It's like, all right, I'm gonna get Jamal Shead later in this, I promise. I don't think anyone out there would bat an eye to talk about Jamal Shead jersey retirement or putting him in the pantheon of program greats like Drexler, Olajuwon, Elvin Hayes, and what have you, because that's how good he's been. That's how legendary of a player he is. And I will say, it was kind of hard not voting for Abby Jackson because of her impact on Cougar volleyball in 5 seasons with that program. A really cool story, too. Like, she was signed by the previous staff from a very small high school far away, I think from the Puget Sound area of Washington. And basically from the first moment of her freshman season 5 years ago has stood out as one of this team's very best players. That she's been a massive part of every big moment this program has had in this resurgence under David Rare. But you could also do a whole series of podcast episodes about Jamal Shead's U of H career, stepping in during his second season as the team's starting point guard when Marcus Sasser went down injured around Christmas in 21, really becoming the heart and soul of some of the very best U of H teams ever. And just the incredible individual moments of his career, hitting the buzzer beater in the last ever game U of H played at Memphis, the OU won from this past season, the 2 wins over the Longhorns. And that's just an extremely short, incomplete list of the incredible, iconic moments from his Cougar career. It takes a lot to stand out in this era of U of H men's basketball. And Shead went so well and beyond just standing out. He's a program icon and will be as long as I draw breath. So he has my vote here. Bobby, a lot of great nominees. Who did you pick?
I chose Abby Jackson for all the reasons that she said. This program, this volleyball program was clinging on for life when she came, basically. And she's been the player who has been the reason why this program, she's been the rock, the anchor, and now she leaves the program as one of the best players in Cougar history, and it was the key person the key player in the turnaround to make this Cougar volleyball team a perennial top 15, top 20 program. Not taking anything away from what Jamal Shead did. Everything you said is absolutely correct. He is a program legend. But Abby Jackson came when this program was not Cougar volleyball as we think of it now. And now, because of her, you always want to leave it better than how you got it. And while Jamal Shead did that, he wasn't a part of as big of a turnaround as Abby Jackson was. Again, that's no shot at Jamal Shead. It just tells you how much Abby Jackson did. And then I also just want to shout out Santiago de la Fuente. He's won conference titles here. He's represented the Cougars in the Masters and a couple of other majors. Great person to represent our university. But the vote for me is Abby Jackson, just because she has been the one player who's been on this roster who has helped oversee the turnaround of this program.
Yeah, I think if you look at, Abby Jackson versus Jamal Shead, there's clearly a larger difference between where Abby Jackson found the program and where it is now than is the case with Jamal Shead. Just because she had the volleyball program had a lot further to go than the men's basketball program had when Jamal Shead got here. So, I think Abby Jackson is a great vote in this one. And she was the biggest part of that change coming. So I think that she's a great vote there. Hated not voting for her because I didn't vote for her. Hated not voting for Sean Maswangani, who, had an incredible career here, and Santiago de la Fuente, like you said, as well. No shame, I think. And if you talk yourself, if you didn't vote for Jamal Shead, you voted for any of the other candidates here. But man, yeah, I still went Jamal Shead. And it's just, one of the things that I kind of came back to is just how successful this men's basketball program has been for the last several years now under Kelvin Sampson. The number of good players we've seen come through this program, the number of accomplishments that they have, even other guys besides Jamal Shead. I don't remember any of those guys graduating and people just being like, U of H has to retire this man's number, if not build a statue of this guy. I don't think you'll find a Cougar fan that doesn't think we need to do one or both of those things for Jamal Shead. Even in an absolute renaissance era of men's basketball, I don't know that anyone really defined the program the way that Jamal Shead did, really led the program the way that Jamal Shead did for as long as he did. I'm pretty sure his number is going to be retired from the rafters of the Fertitta Center one day, along with some of the greats that have come through this program, and it absolutely should be, because you just can't really overstate what a leader he's been, both in terms of the on-the-court production and then just the off-the-court, team leadership aspect as well. So my vote did go to Jamal Shead, although, man, not voting for Abby Jackson for graduating senior hurt my soul. It really did, because you can't really overstate what a job that she has done there. And then the fans ended up going with us as well. Jamal Shead, 68.6% of the vote, gives him the win in this category. Actually, Sean Maswangani was the second place in the fan vote there. So Jamal Shead is going to be our graduating senior of the year. And then, Bobby, I believe you are up for freshman of the year here.
Yep. So freshman, we had to change this just for anybody. It's always been newcomer, but with the transfer portal, we have decided to split this, and we have newcomer of the year, freshman as of this year. If we talk about some of the past winners, you'll notice some may not be freshmen, some may have been transfers, but you have Ed Oliver, Kamari Montgomery, I forgot how to say this. Abakwe, thank you, Dustin. Sean Maswangani, Kyler Edwards, Kate Georgiadis, Alton McCaskill, whatever happened to him. And you have Jarace Walker as well. So freshmen this year, we have Michaela Mooten, Parker Jenkins, Malin Kim, and JoJo Tugler. And this one was tough. It was down to two guys for me. Got it down to JoJo Tugler, Parker Jenkins. I could have seen Malin Kim, but she was the second best player on the team. She had an impact, but not to the level that the person I ultimately voted for, JoJo Tugler, did on the team. JoJo Tugler, when we saw him go down with injury, we really saw this team really change. We saw the depth of the basketball team change a lot. We saw the way they played changed quite a bit as well. So in terms of impact to the team, that's kind of what I based this off of. JoJo Tugler got my vote. But again, I can't argue with the Parker Jenkins vote here. Sam?
Not a knock on the other nominees, and I think all three of us have talked multiple times, multiple categories about how hard voting for some of these categories were. This one actually wasn't that hard for me. I voted for Michaela Mouton for track and field. I go so far as to say I almost had my vote decided before we made the official nominees when she qualified for NCAA Outdoors off of an incredible first season in the Cougar track program, both her indoor and outdoor seasons. Set the school record in the 400 at NCAA West prelims to qualify for outdoors, was part of the 4x4 relay team that advanced to finals at outdoors, got on the podium individually at Big 12 Outdoor Championships, finishing second in the 400, while also being part of the Big 12 champion 4x4 relay. Also was part of the Big 12 indoor 4x4 relay champions. Won the 200 and 400 at multiple prior indoor season meets as well. Only 2 freshmen in the entire country this past outdoor season ran faster times in the 400 than Mouton. Truly a special athlete who I hope we have the privilege of 3 more seasons of watching compete at a high level for the Cougars. The only athlete I could pick for this award, even acknowledging Jenkins, Kim, and Tugler, all very much had big impacts or good nominees for their sports. But I went with Mouton. Dustin?
Yeah, really enjoyed watching all 4 of these athletes this year, but Michaela Mouton was my vote as well for a lot of the reasons you said, Sam. I mean, I felt really bad that I'd gotten this far without voting for any of the members of the U of H women's 4x4 relay after they finished 3rd and 5th at the 2 national champion, not just once, but twice had a strong national championship performances this year, as well as winning the Big 12 titles of both indoors and outdoors. And then you add Michaela Mouton, like Sam said, qualifying for outdoor nats in the 400 as an individual athlete as well. That made me feel pretty good about my Michaela Mouton vote. Not that I didn't really enjoy Parker Jenkins. I mean, I think Parker Jenkins and Jojo Tugler, you look at the men's athletes, 2 guys that I think are just going to be so good for this program over the next 3 years, and really showed a lot. Really just came to, again, and this is, your first freshman class that's going straight to the Big 12, and you got some physical sport. Men's basketball in the Big 12 is a physical sport. Football in the Big 12, that's a physical sport. Both of those guys came in right away and were physically ready for that sport, and made big contributions as a freshman, and I think are going to be really good for the next 3 years. So, Malin Kim had a really fantastic year with the women's golf program as well. So I think 4 really good candidates here, but Michaela Mouton, with just that, so impressive as a freshman, gets my vote here. Looking at the fan vote, we actually had another tie. And again, the vote was almost entirely split between the 3 people that we were kind of debating there, Jojo Tugler, Parker Jenkins, and Michaela Mouton. But we ended up with a 2-way tie between Michaela Mouton and Parker Jenkins, each with 34.3% of the vote, with Jojo Tugler just behind at 25.7%. So with the fans splitting their vote between those 2 guys, that makes Michaela Mouton with 2.5 votes our freshman of the year. Next up, transfer of the year. As Bobby mentioned, we split this category, so no need to run back through the past winners. So transfer of the year, our candidates this year were Kenna Sauer, women's volleyball, Louis Hinchliff from men's track and field, Cameron Maddox, leading goal scorer for women's soccer, Isaiah Hamilton, the defensive back for the football team, LJ Cryer, of course, guard for men's basketball, and then Harold Cole, infielder for the baseball team. And this is the one where I came around and I picked Louis Hinchliff on this one. And this is the one where I was sold by you can't pick against the natty argument here. So I felt a little bit bad going for my second place finisher in the male athlete of the year vote over my winner in the female athlete of the year vote. But I guess ultimately I just think it was a natty, and with the men's track and field, I think maybe if women's volleyball advances, if they get those last couple points, if they get to the Sweet 16 with that win over Stanford, I think at that point I would have not been able to vote against Kenna Sauer in this category. I might have voted for volleyball for team of the year. It would have been hard not to at that point as well. But yeah, having not voted for him for male athlete of the year, I felt bad not voting for Louis there, and felt good voting for him. You come in your first year as a sophomore, even, so not that I think Kenna Sauer needs to be penalized for coming in as a 5th year senior here, but Louis coming in right away, winning a natty as a sophomore, that was enough. I voted for him for my transfer of the year for the first time ever. So Sam, who did you like for transfer of the year?
Really great cases to be made for Hinchliff and Sauer here. In the spirit of kind of spreading my votes out where possible, I voted for LJ Cryer because I feel like he was an overlooked part almost of an incredibly good team. And I remember when his transfer became official last summer, I mean, the book on Cryer from his years at Baylor was that he's this incredible shooter, and that defense was somewhat of a question mark. That he was coming here to get better at that part of his game under one of the best defensive coaches to ever do it in Kelvin Sampson. And I'm sure playing next to a truly elite defender like Jamal Shead can't hurt, but I don't think we ever saw a guy in Cryer who held U of H back on the defensive end. This team has a pretty airtight case for being the best defensive outfit Kelvin Sampson has had here, and there is high levels of competition for that. And if anything, it was almost kind of the scoring ability that came a bit slower at the start of his U of H career. For Cryer, I thought he really carried U of H down the stretch offensively. that stretch of the regular season at points where maybe the team struggled a little bit relative to expectations. Games like that weirdly close Cincinnati home game, the road game against UCF, the dramatic win at OU where Cryer really came up clutch and gave the Cougs a really high-end, I think, scoring option when they very much needed it going to a much tougher league. So I picked LJ Cryer even though there are multiple right answers to the question here. And I thought the season he had and the contributions he gave to this Cougar team, along with guys like Shead and Roberts, I think this was my way of trying to enshrine what Cryer did this season into the long-term podcast record. Bobby, who'd you pick?
I went against the Natty and I chose Kennesaw. I think she was arguably, I would say volleyball, would any of you disagree, was our second best sport this year? She was.
I mean, apparently you disagree because you picked men's track and field for your team of the year.
Fair point. I did. Fair point. Yeah. I
think worst case, it's like in a 2A, 2B situation with men's track and field.
I think volleyball, Kennesaw comes in and you just, I said this when we were going through the candidates, and it was that when she came in, we had high expectations and she exceeded those expectations. And I think even what she did off the court and how the team kind of came around her and she bought into the culture really quickly. You could just tell it felt like she had the most impact from else on the list.
All right. Very funny to me that when it came to male athlete of the year, y'all could not argue with the Natty. Me and the fans could. When it came to transfer of the year, me and the fans could not argue with the Natty, and you and Sam could, because the fans chose Louis Inchliff, 54.3% of the vote. Second place was a tie between Kennesaw and LJ Cryer with the majority of the rest.
I don't have a good argument against it, but I can definitely hear your argument as well.
So yeah, Louis Inchliff with the wins transfer of the year, our first ever transfer of the year winner, which leads us to our very final category, Sam.
Yeah, the play of the year. I am not going to try and act out these things, though. All of y'all that voted got to see the actual video for all these different plays of the year, play of the year, moment of the year, whatever you want to call it. You had Donovan Smith's Hail Mary against West Virginia to beat them. Jamal Shead's buzzer beater at Oklahoma. Caitlin Matthews' absolutely absurd wonder goal against Tarleton. The Jamal Shead put-back dunk in the round of 32 win against A&M, and Louis Inchliff winning the 100-meter national championship at outdoors. That was all. I didn't miss anything, Dustin. I didn't Layla Blair any of these categories. I didn't forget that. Good. I voted for the Hail Mary against West Virginia. I didn't vote for this game or Donovan Smith in any of the other places that came up, whether, just because when it comes to my personal voting logic, a regular season conference win from a team that overall had a pretty bad season puts the performances a bit behind a number of other really absurdly good things U of H accomplished this season. But it's a singular moment for me. And Bobby, you were literally next to me on my couch out here in Vegas for us when you were the closest human being to me on the planet at the time. The sheer spike in emotion from going from thinking U of H was going to pull this one out. Oh yeah. Thinking U of H was going to pull this one out at fourth and long. All we need to do is get a stop to win this game, to West Virginia taking the lead and being like, oh my God, we're going to blow this game in the most just catastrophically bad fashion possible. U of H winning on a Hail Mary in the last play. The most crazy emotional swing that I think you could possibly imagine. Will this be the most meaningful win or accomplishment from the past U of H season? Of course not. But I think if we're talking about absolutely insane, unbelievable, pandemonium in the moment kind of things, I couldn't pick anything but this one. This is the winner, and it'll be a U of H moment I remember for the rest of my life in an otherwise kind of forgettable football season. Bobby, what'd you pick?
Yeah, so I chose the Hail Mary as well. Lots of good plays in the candidates. I think the one I've watched the most was the Jamal Shead putback dunk, just to see everybody's reaction. Like, Jamal Shead didn't really do that very often. He made an A&M player fall down. You see JoJo with his foot in a boot. I believe that's JoJo getting up, and then everyone's basically trying to tell him, like, dude, you need to sit down. There's a lot going on in that video. It's a great video. I highly recommend you watch it as many times as I did. Still not play of the year. Hail Mary versus West Virginia, really, really good play. Just one of those things, to Sam's point, that in an otherwise forgettable year in Cougar football, this felt like the moment that got me the most excited throughout the year. And I just want to shout out the Caitlin Matthews goal. That is an absolutely filthy goal. Again, I said it when we announced the nominees last week that if you hadn't seen it, you need to go watch it and just understand how ridiculous that goal is. It's probably number 3 for me behind the Shead dunk and the Hail Mary, but what an incredible play that was as well. Dustin?
Look at everybody arguing against the Natty on this one, though. I went with the Hail Mary versus West Virginia as well. And honestly, a lot of great plays here. I mean, the Jamal Shead, I agree with you, Bobby. That is the one I've watched the most times. That putback dunk versus A&M, and it was huge. I mean, it was a moment when U of H was losing the momentum in the second half of that game, desperately needed something to give them a little jolt of life. We talk about Emmanuel Sharp going off. Man, if Jamal Shead doesn't have that putback dunk, I don't know if this game makes it to overtime, just because I feel like that game would have gotten away from U of H in regulation if he doesn't do that. So, I mean, incredible moment. I mean, his mom just one of the most incredible, his mother's reaction, one of the greatest things I've seen all year, absolutely. But to get your first ever Big 12 football win against, again, it was kind of fun, against your coach's former team at the time, just on the Hail Mary with the absolute just like roller coaster of emotions that game was. That play was so incredible. It broke through just the absolute just garbage season that was, and just a season where everyone knew we weren't going to be very good from pretty early on. Everyone was just ready for the coach to move on. Everyone was just kind of depressed and miserable most of the football season. And I just walked out of TDECU Stadium on a cloud with every other single Cougar fan that was at that game. Just like you would have walking out of that game, you would have thought that U of H just won a conference championship or something. Just the mood among the fans, just like that, from just absolute, oh God, here we go again. This season is miserable. So just like that was the greatest thing any of us have ever seen. It was just such an incredible moment. And again, just to know that that's your first, for the rest of time, that's your first ever Big 12 football win, came on that Hail Mary. Pretty good stuff as U of H continued to just win its first, get its first Big 12 win against West Virginia in every sport. One of my favorite storylines from the year randomly as well. So enjoy that one. So that is going to be with all 3 votes our winner, although the fan vote actually went with that Jamal Shead putback dunk. That got 53 social or Twitter interactions, I should say, comfortably beating. Second place was the other Hail Mary with 16. So our winner on that one is the Hail Mary versus West Virginia, though not unanimously there. So that is it. 10 categories down. We've run through them all. Although I should mention, we talked about changing categories. Sam mentioned most improved player. We had most improved team. We might have to do most improved player next year. Always looking to innovate here at the Paw-scar Awards, but enjoyed that very much. Hope you, the fans at home, enjoyed that as well. Hit us up in the mentions on Twitter. Let us know which ones we picked wrong here, but there we go. No 3-way ties this year, guys. We did it.
We did it, guys.
All right. I think we're gonna move along. We got to lift some other notes to talk about here. Before we finish up this episode here. So did want to mention the basketball tournament and Forever Coogs continuing to advance. The Cougars on Tuesday night just absolutely dominated Team Colorado in the Fertitta Center for their 4th win of the tournament. Rob Gray going off again to lead the Cougs in this one. And they advanced to the Final Four of that event. So very excited to see, kind of like we continue to talk about with this event. Very cool seeing Rob Gray in the Fertitta Center. Very cool watching this team continue to have a lot of success. And man, after that game I went to in the second round where it looked like they were kind of done for sure, all of a sudden they are in the Elite Eight and absolutely just blowing a team out to advance to the Final Four. So excited to see this team continue to go, guys.
Yeah, I was gonna say something about this program or this program's alums, I guess in the case of Forever Coogs, and a dramatic round of 32 games. Like really good. No, you just got done talking there. I know you're drinking a sip of water, but it wasn't. How cool was that? Like, I am very jealous. I've made my peace the fact that I live too far away to be back very often to various U of H events and get to campus, but I don't know if I've been more jealous than you being able to see like Rob Gray finally play the Fertitta Center in person. Like that is such a really cool thing. And beat some good teams in this event. Like the team they beat in the round of 16 game, the Team Challenge ALS, kind of a California-based team. They had just beaten the number 1 seed in U of H's bracket, the UNT alumni team. bleed green. I think inherently any team that gets as far as the Colorado Team Colorado did, that the Cougars just ran off the court. I think we're, as fans, kind of spoiled seeing U of H men's basketball players, in this case alums, just absolutely make an opponent quit on the Fertitta Center floor, which the Cougars did Forever Coogs, did basically from the word go in that one. Just vintage Rob Gray in that most recent game, the win over Team Colorado, 23 points, 11 for 15 from the field. It was also really cool to see Fabian White Jr. back with the Forever Coogs after completing his NBA Summer League obligations from earlier in July, made his presence known early and often in that one, winningest player in UH men's basketball history, doing winning player things. Some things never change, guys. And also shout out to Jarace Walker for catching the most recent game in person after his Summer League run, which we'll be talking about here in a moment.
Yeah, Fabian White can do no wrong in my eyes. If I feel Fabian White should have a statue outside Fertitta Center. But Rob Gray,
it'll be him doing that his just inside the 3-point line mid-range jumper he got so good at.
Yes, but seeing Rob Gray play at Fertitta Center is just something special. That place kind of feels like the home that Rob built. The stadium that Rob built. Without Rob Gray, does this basketball team have the turnaround that it does? And does that lead to Fertitta Center, or are we still playing in Hoffine? So seeing Rob on the court at Fertitta Center will just be special. I wish I was there in person to see it. Soon to be there, Dustin.
Yeah, I was going to say, I was actually watching on TV in the last game, Fabian White, and he hit a jumper from 1.5 feet inside the 3-point line. And I just got all giddy and exclaimed to my fiance. I was like, he always did that. He shot 80% of that shot somehow.
That's awesome.
Every analytics guy is just screaming, just stop, don't do that.
I'm usually not a fan of that shot, and I can tell you, never once in his last 3 years with the program was I ever Fabian shouldn't take that there. Just inherently trust him to take that. Don't hate also that they opened up the TBT by pretty decisively beating the Austin / UT Austin men's basketball alumnus team, Austin's own. Then a nice little cherry on top of this current run they're on, and they'll be playing in Philly on Friday night against Eberline Drive. So hopefully the Cougars stay alive for that shot for the $1 million prize and put themselves in TBT history with a win.
Absolutely.
And I was gonna say, nice segue here. Jarace Walker I just talked about was participant in the Summer League in Las Vegas. The annual event just wrapped up, I want to say early last week. It was one of, I think, two Cougars who had really notably positive performances out here in the desert. Walker continued a really strong start that I think we talked about a little bit in Vegas with the Pacers, finished the competition averaging 18 points and just over 7 boards and just under 5 assists per game, got second team all Summer League honors. And I think I said when we first talked about Summer League, a recent-ish lottery draft pick like Walker should be doing well against Summer League level competition, but we're also still talking about a very young player and one who I think even against this level of competition did notably well. I probably not surprised the other guy I'm going to talk about, Jamal Shead, had a nice finish to his Summer League. His first one with the Raptors, had 18.6 assists and 4 boards in the Raptors' final game. I think will be tougher sledding as a second round pick to get NBA minutes here in several months, but I would say Shead also in his 4-game sample size out in the desert showed some really good things, some of the things that we saw him do really well at the college level, and that measurables be damned, he could perform a lot better than your average second round draft pick and maybe carve out a nice role for himself with the Raptors.
Yeah, it's very cool to see, like you mentioned, Jarace Walker having a good time. He didn't really get any much playing time his rookie year in the NBA there, but then you look up and you go, oh yeah, right now Jarace Walker is still not legally able to drink alcohol. That's how young he is. So, I mean, that guy's going to be a young NBA player in 3 or 4 years from now. And I think by then he'll probably be much more of a contributor. So definitely hoping to see him get more, I think kind of force his way onto the court this year. And kind of like you said, hopefully Jamal finding a way to make an impact as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I don't have much to add, but to your point, I was thinking the same thing. You'd like to see Jarace Walker would have gotten some more minutes last year, but then to your point, you just think about it and you're like, oh yeah, he's still 20. So,
a super veteran team too. If he would have had a hard time getting minutes on a good playoff team, if memory serves.
Yep.
All right. And then I think next up in the little news segments here is we wanted to talk about Cougar baseball, who we just found out in the last couple of days is going to be losing assistant coach Ross Kivett back to the Tennessee Volunteers. Kivett had been with the Volunteers before he came to U of H as a graduate assistant, and then now goes back to Rocky Top for a full-time coaching position, matching what he had at U of H. So, I mean, definitely a bummer, as much as that baseball program has been underperforming for a while now. With Kivett kind of running the offense the last couple of years, we've seen this offense do real well. That's been the side of the ball that's actually performed to high expectations, and certainly as a young guy, certainly kind of renowned as being one of the better recruiters on the team as well. So, even though it was 7 or 8 years ago we lost Frank Anderson to Tennessee, I just kind of got a flashback when I saw that news. I'm like, damn you Volunteers, why do you every time we have a good assistant baseball coach, you got to poach him? So definitely frustrating. But I mean, I think we also kind of knew that Ross Kivett, being as well respected and as well regarded and as kind of well considered to be a rising young star in the industry as he is, I think we had to kind of know on some level he wasn't gonna stay around and be an assistant at U of H forever.
No, and I even remember when he was hired here that at the time, because that going into the 22 season when he was hired, college baseball is still under you could only have 2 full-time assistant coaching roles. And it's like, oh yeah, like we would have absolutely given him one of those because he was with the staff for a good minute at Tennessee. We would have given him one of those if we could, and U of H had the opening and thus got to benefit from 3 years of him, I think, doing a really good job as an assistant here. I mean, say what you want about the on-field product, it was never perfect, but hitting and fielding were often the strengths of the last 3 U of H teams and were the areas that Kivett had the most responsibility for. I mean, I think the next step from here is eventually him getting to run his own program after some amount of time on the Tennessee staff. I mean, if Tennessee remains national title contender as watching, U of H finally makes a coaching change here in a season or two, I'd hope he's at least part of a large preliminary list of candidates that U of H reaches out to. Not saying he should be a shoo-in for any hypothetical opening. We have no idea who else would be interested in that, but I certainly hope he gets consideration because he's a rising star in this industry. And like you said, that's like kind of bizarre that Tennessee specifically is responsible for poaching 2 of the most successful assistants U of H has had in the last 7 or 8 years. I mean, it's no matter how good this program is, though, you are never going to be able to, if the SEC defending national champions wants your assistant coach, they will probably get them. And that's the case here. And I think we wish him the best, whatever's next for him in his career.
Yeah, my big takeaway is, to your point, that's the side of the game that we've been playing really, doing really well, and to see him leave is disappointing. You kind of wonder if you had made a change in that bat and ball sport, if he wouldn't top candidate, somebody you could have kept in and kept here. But stuff happens, I guess. All right, so the last thing. Speaking of stuff happening. Our last little thing we're going to talk about here before we go is not really Cougar related. It's more Scott and Holman podcast directly related. This is, as we mentioned, the last episode of season 9, with next week's episode will be 10:01. And going into season 10, I will not be a full-time every week host of this podcast going forward. So, I know you guys are like, wait.
I debated doing a spit take, but I do not want to spit sparkling water on my laptop, even though I've known this for quite a while. Sorry.
Yeah. It doesn't mean you, the listener, is never going to hear or see me again. I'll certainly be around. If either of these two
you can find them on Blue Sky.
Yeah, you can find me on Blue Sky at Dustin.vsky on social. If these guys need a week off, it's not fun to do a monologue. I'll certainly I'll be coming in and filling in as needed to make sure we don't have Cougar monologues going on when we have big episodes. We're doing our bold predictions. The very next episode, I'm saying goodbye, and then the very next episode, you're going to see me on here. Right, once again, not leaving. After 9 years of doing this every single week, I've loved every minute of it. I wouldn't trade any of it for the world. Doing this podcast for the last 9 years is one of the best, most fun things I've ever done. It's one of the things I'm proudest of that I've ever done in my life. I've had so much fun with Sam all these years, and Bobby the last year or so, adding, I think, a dimension that the podcast lacked and making it an even more fun thing. And it just became a question, though, of this being an every single week thing, the last thing I wanted to do is keep doing this podcast if it wasn't going to be fun for me or keep doing this podcast if I couldn't put 100% of myself into this, research the topics we're going to talk about, so I a little bit know what the hell I'm talking about before we come on here. And it just was starting to get to the point where doing that work every single week to make sure I knew what I was talking about we're just getting to feel a little bit like a chore, and I just didn't want it to be that way. Like I said, I definitely did not want to leave the podcast entirely, and that's not what I'm going to be doing. You'll see me, I'm sure, at least a handful of times on regular episodes throughout the year. And then also my plan is to basically just kind of go a little bit more full bore into doing some larger projects, stuff that maybe we'll be launching next summer. So be on the lookout for that, as well as I'll be kind of pondering and working on some larger projects that will just feel a little bit more creatively enjoyable for me than the grind of just every single week coming here and putting out an episode. Because as much as we often make jokes about, and I'm sure it often looks like the two or three of us just kind of joking around and having a good time, we take it seriously. We try to know what the heck we're talking about when we're on here. So ideally, it looks like us just kind of goofing around, but that's hopefully based on us having put a lot of work in, so we can goof around and say things that are actually factually correct and stuff like that. So huge thank you to everyone that's listened over the years or watched on YouTube, that's reached out and told us, hey, I wasn't really following volleyball until you guys just talk about it every week, and now I can't stop watching those games. There's people asking us questions. Oh, what do you think is going to happen with this? What do you think is going to happen with this? Like, we've loved that. We've loved every second of it. And like I said, I feel a little bit weird that this is turning into like the tearful goodbye, because I'm not really going away. You're just not going to see me.
You'll literally be on here next week.
I will literally be here next week.
Was I not supposed to delete the group text? Was I not supposed to delete that? Oh, my bad, guys.
He's going to text me like, why is the Twitter password changed?
Yeah, right. So not a real goodbye, but we did just want to let y'all know what's going on before you all of a sudden don't see me here as often. So that's it. And I appreciate, I can't say enough thanks to Sam, who, when we started out this podcast, we were pretty evenly splitting all of the podcast editing duties and the things like that aren't the most fun aspect of this. And Sam, for the last 2 or 3 years, has pretty much just taken that entirely on his shoulders to make this less of a grind for me. So I appreciate that, bud. Bobby, having you on here has extended my life on this podcast, extended how long I wanted to hang around, because I've enjoyed the vibe that we get with all three of us here. But like I said, just time to move on. And like I said, hopefully this means you'll see in the future continued weekly podcasts on Cougar sports from these two guys and occasionally me. And then also some bigger project stuff that will hopefully be a little more fun, be a little novel, and be something that you, the listener, will enjoy. So I don't have a good exit strategy here, but that's the end of my the end of my rant. The end. Thank you.
I was just gonna say, you deserve more than 2 sentences, but I know you're a big fan of brevity here. Couldn't have done it without you. Thank you for being willing to we were just like, hey, no one else is doing a U of H podcast. We certainly can't do a worse job than nobody, which we put to the test probably the first season or two. But to be willing to embark on that with me and to do like almost 500 episodes of podcasts like you, it's one of the things I'm most proud of when I look at my life for the last 15, 20 years, and could have done without you, bud. And it wouldn't have been the same if it hadn't been you doing it here with me. So gone more than the 2 sentences I wanted to go briefly here, but you're going to be missed here. And I'm acting like I'm not going to talk with you just the same amount of time and see you the same amount of times. But
after this is over,
I'm not literally going to be on the next episode.
I'm not literally going to see you next week. It's been an absolute pleasure, bud, and that is probably underselling it.
Yeah, I won't say too much since I've only done this a year, but I've been supporting you guys from day one. I remember back in the in the Autry days when we decided we would start a blog, and that went really well, I guess you could say. And then just watching you guys just get better on the mic, and just listening from episode 1. If you go back and listen to season 1 to where,
which we wouldn't recommend, to be clear.
No, don't do it. Don't actually do it. But just hearing how you guys have grown as a podcast and how you've grown on the mic, and I know you're very much outside of the podcast, you're very much an introverted person. You don't like to make big shows of anything, so you stepped out here, you did your thing, and you were still are one of the best ambassadors for this athletic program that I can think of, and some of the coolest stuff that I've experienced as a Cougar fan has come with you. So I appreciate the friendship, and I appreciate the allowing me to be the one who talks to you outside of the podcast, and encourage you in everything you do, man. Happy for you.
Hey, I appreciate you, the kind words, y'all. I feel a little bit like I'm being eulogized here. So very much alive, very much going to be here next week. But no, we appreciate that. And so at least once more, we'll go ahead and I'll take us through the outro here, guys. At least one more time, I would like to encourage you, if you enjoy the Scott and Hone podcast, and if you think you can afford $5 a month, we'd love for you to go to patreon.com/shpodcast, become a Scott and Hone podcast patron. If you're already doing that, can't tell you. I know, and I'm not even going to be here full time going forward, so I have no reason to lie to you, and I 100% mean it when I say it means the world to Sam, to Bobby, and myself, just how many people enjoy the work we do enough to want to voluntarily put some money behind this freely offered product. So thank you so much to our Scott and Hone podcast patrons. I would love hearing from you guys. You can email us, shpodcast@gmail.com. You can tweet at us at shpodcast. And yes, damn it, you can absolutely blue sky us at podcast.bsky.social. So that's it for us. If you made it all the way to the end, you are an absolute rock star. And as always,
go Cougs.
All right. Go Cougs. Let's go.